This little yellow book caught my rapt attention amidst the dusty shelves of a quaint little bookshop called Muzib Books in the hidden alleys of Hanuman Circle near Mumbai. Circular architecture by Francesca Zanotto took my understanding of the subject of circular economy to an elite world of design ideology. This design ideology provoked my thinking towards bringing it in our practice during environment consultancy. This little yellow book allured my interest for consulting during environmental clearances of building construction in area township development because it's high time we reflect on architecture taking into account the relationship between design and consumption. All of us as individuals, be it environmental consultants, architects or developers, we are either conscious or unconscious consumers in each stage of our existence, even before being citizens. Consumption is also an inherent in human nature, the basis of metabolism and survival. Also, it has become the primary source of pleasure and fulfillment since the very first moments of life. This book is a multidisciplinary assessment of the relationship of consumption and architecture. In the initial chapter itself, it states that the direct result of consumption is waste as an architectural concern as material, spatial, environmental and even a cultural issue. Though this book is small in size, it comprises of abstract and metaphorical sentences with deep meanings. It may seem like a booklet, but explains the depth of concepts of waste, resources, and architectural consumption. It's an absolute delicacy for a person in science with love for arts and language. One such deep phrase which touched me was that the abundance of waste resources and awareness of their scarcity, of which waste is both consequence and an antithesis. This book holds immense value when we talk about concepts like carbon neutral or net zero buildings. The author is unbiased in elaborating the duplicity in two global approaches existing in our current relationship with waste. It states, environmental awareness suggests reducing waste on one, and on the other hand, more and more systems are developing around the employment of waste as a resource. Zero waste and waste as a resource ambitions are conflicting models. To show the way forward, the author further says, on the one hand, there is widespread tendency to reduce waste through prevention, performing forward-looking strategies to avoid the very production of waste. This scenario theoretically foresees an interruption in the production of waste or a reduction or slowing down over time. In the meanwhile, the remaining waste would be processed with the currently employed methods like recycling, conversion to energy, composting, and in an asymptomatic adjustment, process towards an equilibrium where the amount of produced waste tends to zero without reaching it, because a completely closed metabolism is not possible. Even human metabolism is not closed. Now, if we see that in an increasingly efficient system, we can have a circular organization for this. The approach based on the idea that waste is a resource considers waste produced by one process as the input for another process. Therefore, if waste is needed to make several processes or projects function, a significant amount and a constant amount is needed to make the global machine run. The contact point between the zero waste scenario and the waste as a resource approach lies in gradual reduction of unnecessary waste, tending to zero but not zero, and better management of necessary waste. Unavoidable waste or waste that maintains a high value should be separated, better refined, and homogenized to be easily reused as raw material in new cycles. The author is hopeful that redesigning of waste would be possible in the current age when, after decades of capitalism, waste derived from overconsumption is everywhere and has become progressively familiar. Circular architecture or even waste management is a part of the design of any building, product, service, and even operations. Circular architecture by Francesca Zanotto is a design ideology for circular built environment which entails buildings and districts that are able to regenerate and restore natural capital. Buildings which may include systems and spaces to harvest biomass and food cultivated with locally produced soil and compost, where food and biomass are produced in specific spaces on roofs, terraces, as well as in spaces set free by reduced need for parking space. And building green and blue infrastructures which can foster biodiversity. Composting waste, which is either sold or made available to neighbors or to other stakeholders who are reached through the web. Surplus can be stored in soil banks. The utilization of buildings and assets is maximized. Vehicle sharing is also a part of this design picture. In residential buildings, rarely used tools and objects are put in common libraries. Common belongings mean fewer physical assets. The authors suggest how a circular approach to architectural design may imply deep changes in the use and conception of buildings and also in the lifestyles that unfold them. Definitely, this ideology is a huge challenge, but before we make smart cities, we need livable cities. The circular paradigm suggests choosing, designing with repurposed materials and components. It constitutes a revolutionary approach to design. The author closes in with reflections of a bird's eye view for putting it to practical discipline even within the decades of capitalism, chaos, and consumerism. This book leaves a mark to fathom the fact that we as people are a part of the whole rather than individual architects or environmentalists or bankers. The perspective to keep resources in cycles.